I would love to welcome Geraldine to kick off today's session with some insightful information and guidance. Over to you, Geraldine.
Thank you very much, Temi. That's a very warm welcome, and I'm very glad to be invited to speak today about Enterprise and to meet yourself as well as the panel. And I'm really looking forward to hearing you sharing your thoughts. So first of all, as it's Black History Month, I feel like I want to start the session by celebrating the Black colleagues who have inspired me and from whom I have learned so much. I know that Black History Month is about celebrating Black people, and I know often people have been erased from history, so I want to make sure I name my colleagues who are inspirational. So before I start, I'm just going to paste those in the chat for everyone, and somebody will share them to the rest of the webinar if I can't do that right away. So the two people I really want to name are my colleague, Dr. Val Watson, who's been doing a lot of work supporting students. She worked in higher education, such as myself, for over 20 years. She's written on the topic. And indeed, when I was invited to this panel, she was the first person I consulted with. And I said, Val, I don't think I'm the best person to speak about Black History Month. Please help me. And as always, she was so supportive and inspirational. And she said it was really good actually to have some white people celebrating Black History Month, because she said it's about the allyship, really. The work shouldn't just be done by Black people, it's for everybody to take a part. So I was really happy to hear that. And the other colleague who I found really inspirational is called Rotimi Akinsete, and I have to read his name because I don't want to kind of mispronounce it. When you're under pressure on invited on a webinar, you want to get people's name right. He's done a lot of work. He's really good. He does something called Black Man on the Couch, and I am pasting the link to one of his recorded of Black Man on the Couch. If you're interested, he does some amazing work. He's done it with loads of famous Black people in different settings, sportsmen, politicians, journalists. So I would really highly recommend that you watch one of his films. So that was the first thing that I wanted to say. The other thing I was thinking when we're thinking about well-being, I mean, my kind of expertise is working in universities and young professionals who are starting. And I think we see those universities are doing a lot of work to increase participation from Black students and to encourage Black students to come to university, which is brilliant. However, we also know that when people, for instance, come to university, there can be what we call an attainment gap for people coming from Black and minority ethnic group. And I think it's really important, and we see that university doing a lot of things about encouraging and supporting Black students when they come, because they face more discrimination. They might have a different background coming to university, sometimes the first person in their family to come to university. And we see that sometimes people don't get the same opportunity, and as a result, might not feel that they belong to university and leave university, or don't get perhaps some of the highest mark as some of their colleagues. So any initiative, I think, which is going to support Black students and Black professionals to remain at work and stay well when they're at work is really important. So I'm going later on in the program, I'm going to paste a link to Student Space on Student Mind. So I'm here on behalf of Student Mind today, and they do a lot of work thinking about hearing from Black students about the things that they find useful on their journey at university. And one of the things I think is about really important when I work with colleagues is to think about how can you support yourself, right? You are in an environment where sometimes you're in the minority. How can you create space where you're celebrated for who you are? The last thing we want when we include Black students or Black professionals is that they have to behave like their white colleagues, right? That's not diversity. That is just trying to get people to be all the same. And the beauty, I think, in all of us is that we're different, and we want to celebrate that difference. We want to hear it, and we want to have all those different points of view. So when you come to university, I think it's particularly important, or in the workplace, that you have some spaces where you find people where you can be celebrated for yourself, whether they're Black colleague, white colleague, whether they're mentor, in your workplace or outside of your workplace. So that's the kind of thing that I think is really helpful. I think it's and then I'll be around for the rest of the session. If people have any question, I'll paste the link to Student Space for Student Mind with the information specific for people coming from Black background. But really what I want to hear is from you. This is about celebrating people on the panel today on here. So I just want to just shut up now and let the space for you guys to speak.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your insights there, Geraldine. I think you provided some excellent guidance and support there. Now I would like for us to move on to the main part of our session, our panel discussion. Today we are joined by Samara Valton, Jonathan Kenda, and Ashley Thomas. Would you each like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so my name is Samara. I'm currently a final year student at Loughborough University, and I previously did my placement with Enterprise Mobility as a government and public affairs intern, and I'm so glad to be here today.
Love that, Samara. Jonathan?
Yeah, my name's Jonathan. If you can't tell by my accent, I'm a Scouser, and I'm in my third year at university, also studying at the University of Liverpool. Didn't want to move too far away from home. And I'm currently studying international business, and I also did an internship last year with Enterprise Mobility with the Daily Rental team in Hull.
Perfect.
My name is Ashley Thomas. I'm currently working in talent development for Enterprise Rent a Car in the southeast of England. I started with my enterprise journey 8 years ago. I know it also doesn't look like it, but I started my enterprise career 8 years ago. I started off just the same way as both of these guys, so in the rental path as well, renting cars, and worked my way into this sector of the business.
Amazing. Thank you all for that introduction. Let's get into some of these questions. So, can you all for all of you, can you share a bit about your career journeys so far and how your background has influenced your path? So, Samara, let's start with you.
Okay, so my career path is very, very short. I actually had my very first full-time role with Enterprise. So that was my first introduction to the corporate life, actually being paid to do something. A lot of the time I was doing more volunteer or unpaid internships, but that's still centered around community work. So working in cancer research stores or with an educational charity called Into University that actually encouraged me to go to university. They focus on helping people from low income backgrounds, trying to like give them the knowledge of how to get in. And a lot of the time, you do find that it is predominantly ethnic minority people that need that extra support. Going into enterprise and a bit more about like how that kind of factors my black identity and things like that. I didn't really know what to expect. I like to wear my hair naturally. I like to present myself as authentically as possible. So I was very conscious about the way I might come across. Luckily, I was at a company that celebrated me for who I was, and I had a manager that really supported me in every shape and form. So there was actually no worries about having to act a certain way. I definitely felt that I could be who I am and explore my identity in a very safe environment.
I would definitely agree with that, Samara, especially when you touched on the hair. You know, I think I've worn my hair several different ways, and it's nice when it's embraced in a work
enjoy
environment.
The confidence. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that, Samara. Jonathan, same question for you.
Smashing. So before I went to university, I actually did a bit of traveling, and I did a lot of voluntary work, and I actually went to Angola to do a bit of voluntary work, which is southwest of Africa. In school growing up, my school, probably in my year, there was only about 4 or 5 black kids out of about 200 kids. So I always felt the need to kind of fit in until I went to Angola. I got to experience a little bit more about my culture because that's where my family's from. Got to learn a little bit about myself. So when I came back to university in the work world for retail, I kind of understood both sides and managed to find a balance where I can make sure I could belong and wherever I was to work. And then obviously coming into enterprise, like Samara said, I think that emphasis of belonging was echoed. I was in a place where I was valued for myself, for me. They hired me not only for my skill set, but what else I could bring into the company. And being in daily rental, you interact with a lot of customers, and interact with a lot of people, and interact with a lot of colleagues from different backgrounds. And so being able to have that experience of trying to fit in, but then finding a place where I belonged allowed me to resonate with a lot of people and work effectively with a lot of people in the work world, which I found really, really enjoying.
I can imagine. That's great. Ashley?
My story is a little bit different from both of yours. I grew up in Southeast London, which is a hub of diversity. So actually, when I went to school, I could probably actually count how many Caucasian people there were in my year group on my hands. So for me, I've always been surrounded by diversity, by Black people, by people of multicultural backgrounds. It was only when I really started this job, actually, I was put in a branch inside of Kent, which was outside of London. And I went and I worked in a location that actually had no other Black employees. And that, for me, sometimes I think we can get in our own heads. And I was my worst enemy in that situation, because I guess just like you, Samara and Temi as well, as a Black guy that actually does have long hair, I went into my branch and I went into my branch and I was like, uh-oh, no one has hair like me. No one looks like me. What do I do? How do I talk? How do I behave? Because I'd always been surrounded by that diversity. And so I was really worried. And I think I got into my own head about that situation a lot. But everyone was genuinely actually really welcoming. So in terms of how that shapes my career path, it actually made me even more open to learning and talking to more people about what they like, what things they like, who they are, which ultimately led me to relocate with the company. And I moved to Essex at some point, actually. So relocated, moved out for the first time with the company. Then I came back to London again. And then ultimately, just from learning so many different ways to communicate with people, to help people grow in their careers, I felt like, for me, that's one of the things that I love the most. And that's what pushed my journey into the HR section of the business. And so now I work in talent development, just trying to ultimately inspire and develop the future leaders of our business.
I think that is honestly a great story there, Ash. And you've even kind of touched on it there. All of you have. I want to dive a bit more into that. What does Black History Month mean to you guys personally and professionally now that we're in the month of October?
You know what? I'm a history. Oh, do you want to go first?
Samara?
So I'm currently studying history and international relations. I'm a history fanatic. I'm actually doing my dissertation around Black British identity in the media. Enough about that. But Black history for me has been incredibly important, mainly because I also, like Jonathan, went to predominantly white schools and always felt as like an outcast. I went from a predominantly white primary to a predominantly Black secondary, back into a predominantly white sixth form. And the relationship I had to have with myself obviously changed as I got older and understood a bit more about my place, not only in Britain, but in the world more generally. And sometimes I think Black History Month does itself a little dirty by focusing more on American Black history, African Americans, and all of that. A lot of the time we forget us Black Brits, we also exist, we also have a lot of history. So for me, it's a lot about reconnecting what's happening back at home, reconnecting with what my grandparents went through when they first came over from Barbados. It's all about, currently we are Black history, we are making moves, we are the people that will continue to carry on to this story for the next generation. And in more of a professional aspect, I think it's always important to remember who you are and where you come from, because when you go into spaces where you may be the odd one out, quote unquote, odd one out, you know who you are, you feel much more comfortable, much more confident, and no one can really take that from you.
Great answer there, Samara. I love that. Ashley, I know you were keen to get in there as well.
Yeah, I think just on a personal level, I think especially when you look into the statistics as well, there are so many Black families that grow up in single parent families, as well as myself, who even grew up in a single parent family, growing up on school meals. I'm one of 4 kids that my mum had, and we all grew up together. Obviously, I was on school meals. My mum wasn't working throughout a lot of my junior years of life, and so for me personally, Black history is also seeing and understanding the struggles of our Black like brothers and sisters who ultimately don't always have those father figures, don't always have the grandparents around and available, don't always have the financial stability to say, this is something that I want to do and that I want to go for. And very often we lock and hide themselves away, hide that side of ourselves away. And so for me personally, I always love to try and inspire and show people what you can achieve in life, to be able to have both the financial freedom and the securities in your life to say that you can do and achieve absolutely anything that you want. So for me, on a professional level, representation means so much. It's so important to be able to see representation of what you want to be in your future, to help you understand the steps that are involved in getting there and achieving that for yourself. So for me, that's what Black History Month means. It's the time to shine the light on everyone that is a role model and can be a role model for you in the future.
Agreed. And Jonathan?
I think Samara and Ashley took the words out of my mouth. Honestly, great answers. I think personally for me, when I look at Black History Month, it always shows to me like it's an emphasis on heritage and understanding my roots and my background. And obviously, growing up in an African household, I think heritage is a big thing that gets echoed. But when you get a month to kind of get everyone involved to kind of see that, we can get to kind of highlight our resilience throughout the years that we've been able to display. I think in the career setting, I think Black History Month is in a professional setting is so important, is because we get to share that with other people, and we get to share, for example, the experiences of those that we tend to highlight with people that might not necessarily understand about Black history or about these role models. And especially for me, I think Ashley kind of touched upon it a little bit. And my biggest role model, my biggest Black role model will always be my mum. And so being able to show her resilience through, her career background is not an exceptional. She's not a big CEO. She's just a regular cleaner. But to me, her endurance and raising 5 kids, in a country that's so strange to her is phenomenal, and that kind of inspires me to go about my day to day to be more like her. So I think in a professional setting, when I'm able to share that with other people and they can kind of take inspiration from her, it does the world for me.
That's such a lovely thing to say. I'm sure your mom is so proud. Okay, next question. What role do you believe Black professionals play in shaping the future of the work culture, both within your company and the industry? I think I'm going to go with Samara on this one. Potentially you, Jonathan, too.
Okay, so I think Ashley really touched upon it about representation and making sure that you can see yourself in that position, and also in spaces where you may not see the representation that you're looking for. You can be that representation. You can be the person to take that first step, because you're not the only person thinking, oh, I wonder if there's more Black people who are CEOs in this industry or in this other industry. A lot of the time in my placement, I'd walk into rooms, into like the House of Parliament or meeting MPs and go, I don't see anyone that really looks like me. And until I met someone who looks like me, I think her name was MP Paula, can't remember her last name. She was MP for a Birmingham constituency. Absolutely lovely woman. She wore her locks very proudly. She spoke the way that she was raised. She was so authentically her and still stayed connected to who she was as a Black individual. It was very, very inspiring, mainly because I had this whole conception in my head that working within politics, working within government, whether you're representing a company or representing your constituents, you had to act a certain way. You had to be much more British and you had to neglect that other side of you. So, yeah.
To be honest, I can even add to that. I think even when I started at Enterprise Mobility, I touched on it a bit earlier, but when I started to see certain people in senior leadership, Black women in senior leadership at Enterprise, it was like, wow, do you know what? I'm not just limited to staying as a trainee. I could see myself as a senior leader, and probably why I'm still here in the business coming up to 7 years. So I can completely relate and do believe that, yeah, it's so important that we have Black professionals doing well and shaping the future for all of us. Jonathan, I know I just chipped in there, but let's hear from you.
Could you just repeat the question one more time, just so I can make
sure?
Yeah,
of course. What role do you believe Black professionals play in shaping the future of work culture, both within your company and industry?
Smashing. So I think the first thing is having Black professionals helps with a lot of background from people from diverse backgrounds coming in. I think it helps a lot with well-being, especially when you walk into a career setting, and you're trying to fit in. That takes a lot on your mental health, and it can kind of deter you slowly. So I think having Black professionals shows that you can, as I mentioned before, you can belong and you can feel natural, you can feel yourself, and that helps in terms of your improvement, your performance, a big time. I think another thing having Black professionals in the workplace is it encourages, I mean, everyone, we mentioned at the start, we're all from different backgrounds, but having Black professionals encourages that kind of diversity of thought. So we're all having an impact on what we can say and how we can improve the business and our work worlds and our career. So I think that's so important. And I think the most important thing is having a mentor, is that you can go and relate. If I go to a a white male for mentorship. They can definitely help me out, but there's certain things that they won't understand about me. But if I go to a black mentor, they'll understand exactly what I mean in terms of culture, in terms of my background, and they'll be able to give me advice that would be more appropriate to help me progress in the work world, which I think is very important.
I think that was very well said. Okay, next question. Ashley, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your career today, and how does it align with your identity as a Black individual?
Okay, this is going to be a wee bit embarrassing for you, Temi, because actually one of my most rewarding achievements is genuinely being your manager at one point. So throughout my history, I was a branch manager. I've had multiple assistant managers, and coming up through the ranks, I think one of the biggest achievements I've ever had is just helping other people to develop and navigate their own careers as well. And I remember having Temi as my assistant at one point, and sitting her down and asking her, "What do you want to achieve, Temi?" I asked her, "What do you want to achieve? What do you want us to do here together in this branch? How much money do you want to make?" It's really important to understand what other people want and how they want to achieve that. And I remember sitting and having that conversation with you. And within 6 months, you'd been promoted to your own branch. And now look at you, Temi. Oh my God, you are a shining inspiration to me. And I think that's one of the things that I think I love about life so much, not even just Black History Month, but just life in and of itself. Sometimes the people who sometimes view you as a mentor go on and do such fantastic things that I, in turn, see you as a mentor for some of the ways that you have shown me what you're capable of. And for me, that's just so beautiful. One of my biggest achievements.
Wasn't expecting that. Thank you. But even just touching on that, the fact that I had you as a manager at some stage, you know, as a Black representative, someone that looks like me, someone that can relate to me, someone that can understand me, it was honestly very, very encouraging, very, very motivating. It gave me the ambition, you know, to see, okay, actually, I can make it to branch manager. And yeah, I guess that's why I was able to push myself to get to that stage. So thank you as well for being such a great manager and being a great role model. Next question. Have you had mentors or role models that have helped to shape your career? So it ties in really nicely there. I think Samara and Jonathan, it would be good to hear from you guys again. Yeah, have you had any mentors or role models?
I can start on this if that's okay, Samara.
Yeah,
so yeah. So before I even started applying for the work, well, especially in terms of my internship in university, I've always had a close family friend called, let's say his name was Stephen. And Stephen was a white guy, and he's actually quite predominant. He's very high up in his company. And I'd always ask him for advice, and he'd always be willing to give me advice because he's known me ever since I was a child. And it got to a point where the more questions I'd ask him, the more he felt restricted or limited to answer, because it came, as I mentioned before, you know, these were cultural things. And so he said, you know what, I'm gonna give you someone's number, and I want you to get in contact with them. And he's this guy from Zimbabwe. He's quite high up in the company as well, and he's had a similar background to you, and he'll be able to help you. So I shot him a message, and straight away I thought, he was like, listen, I want to set up a call. We'll have an hour call and we'll just get to know each other. And I thought, this is bizarre. This, like, how quick. I thought he's very busy, but he's took time out of his day to kind of chat to me. And the first call, we literally just chatted away about life, about background. And honestly, I started to see a lot of similarities that we had. And then from then on, he would always check up on me. And then the funny thing was, so he lived in Hull. I'm from Liverpool, as I mentioned before. And I did my internship. I had to move over to Hull. And I didn't know he lived at Hull at the time. And he shot me a message, and he was just like, oh, I'm in the area. I'm in Hull, just having a coffee, blah, blah, blah. What are you up to? And I was like, oh my, I'm in Hull myself. Shall we meet up? And we met up. And he invited me to so many events in regards to how we could promote Black culture, how we can promote Black History Month, how it feels to be like a Black person in the workplace, and how we can navigate through that. And that gave me so much insight in how I could be prepared for the work world as a Black person. And so his advice went a long way for me because it actually shaped me to understand, okay, like I said before, I'm not here by myself. There's someone who's walked my shoes before, and he's given me the blueprint that if I, not necessarily be just follow word by word, but if I, do similar steps to what he's done, that I can make it, and that, the support there in doing so. So I found my mentor to be great there.
I thought that was great there, Jonathan, and apologies as well for that. Samara, can we also hear from you, please?
So I don't think I've ever really had a mentor, but my role model is definitely my mum as well. She's also a single parent. She's raised me, just me and my brother, for most of, in fact, like all of my life. And she's had a lot of career changes and always is constantly going for the next best thing to better herself, whether that's her education, whether that's investing in her children. My mum's never told me you can't do anything. She recognizes there are sometimes barriers for Black individuals and young Black women, especially, that we face, and we kind of have to learn how to tackle it. Maybe not grit our teeth anymore and maybe be a bit more open about it. But she's always taught me to raise my voice up a little bit more, go for the things that I want to do. And that's always been something that's really encouraged me to go into the unknown. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But when it does, it feels really, really good. And again, during my placement, I had my manager, Laura. She was fantastic in also making sure that I speak up for myself. A lot of the time, I did tell her, I've never worked a corporate job. I don't know the kind of unspoken rules that goes on in this place. No one's taught that to me. None of my family members have taught that to me. I don't know exactly what I'm doing in these spaces. And she was a great mentor in telling me, this is how you might want to form your emails. This is how you might want to speak to so-and-so person. This is how you might address an MP. This is what these kind of structures look like. And once I had that in mind and had that in place, I was able to really go far within my placement because I knew I had someone who had my back and someone who wanted to see me do well. And just the combination of these two women have made me into someone I can be really, really proud of. And I just can't wait to see what I go and do after graduation.
I love that. And also touching on what you've just said there and what Jonathan said, I think it's also important to highlight that, I think in Jonathan's story, he mentioned that he had this senior sort of mentor already who was called Stephen and who was Caucasian, but even in that was able to acknowledge, hey, I can set you up with somebody or be some sort of support by setting you up with another Black, professional that is able to be a mentor of some sort or even a role model. And it's great that we have allies like this that can help support and help us to, establish our Black identities within these professional environments, and also developing our careers as a result of that. So great to have both of those answers, to be honest.
Can I just add to that?
Oh yeah, go for it.
That's a great point. And I think this comes back to the idea of what we were talking about of, being more diverse in the workplace, is that you see an environment that was dominated before by a certain ethnicity wanting the other ethnicity to win. And so you knock a lot of barriers straight away. And when you're more diverse, it's because everyone, for example, Stephen, he wanted to see me win, but he didn't know how. And so he's trying to set me up to win with someone else. And I think that's wonderful when you get to such a diverse stage of a workplace that everyone wants you to win, everyone wants you to be happy, and they'll do everything that they can to support you, and they'll put you in the right direction to do so.
And it's always great when you do have, like I said, those allies who are ready to sort of support and ask the questions, how can we, make this an environment that's better for you so that you can go ahead and achieve. And I think that there's also responsibility on our part as Black people as well in the industry, in our careers, to be able to educate and, answer some questions when they are asked. And so hopefully, we can start to, like I said, excel in our professions and our careers. So great. I think we still have some time for some additional questions. Okay. What steps do you think companies can take to create a more inclusive and supportive work environment for Black employees? I feel like if each of you, all three of you, can maybe give 1 point, that would be really good. So let's start with Ashley.
Okay, so what steps can companies take? I think there's so many different things. Like so many that we've already touched on, like mentorship. I think mentorship is such a fantastic thing that companies can do to foster generations of confidence in Black employees and for all different cultures that you have coming through the ranks. But I think one thing that I've also been a part of that, to be fair, was born from your idea, Temi, to be fair, was reverse mentoring, which is ultimately where junior employees are the mentors of senior employees. So as a diverse employee, I had a mentor, which was one of our senior leadership employees, to be fair. And we would literally just talk about life events, how as an employee, I view certain situations, and how certain initiatives and how they're rolled out also affect and impact me again as a diverse employee. And it just helps our senior leadership team make decisions that are more inclusive for everyone that joins the business, and not just that they're able to understand from their own perspectives. So I think that's one step that companies can take that will really make a big difference.
Agreed. And yeah, I'm glad that you touched on that reverse mentoring scheme. And just to reiterate on what you said, it's a program where junior, I guess, Black individuals or Black professionals or people from any type of ethnic minority are reverse mentoring senior leaders in the business, and it gives them the opportunity to have open forums. And I think that is a great way of maybe progressing and moving forward to make the workplace more inclusive. Samara.
Yeah, I guess on the same note of outreach, I think sometimes getting onto the ground level with Black youth, a lot of the time we're making decisions in university, we're thinking about graduation, we're thinking about that next big thing. But a lot of the time, I think back to my secondary school period, it was filled with amazing Black talent, you know, from sports to academics to sciences, all types of things. But there just wasn't enough information given to us about what we could be. Everybody wanted to be a football player, some people wanted to be a lawyer, but there's so much in between that. And it wasn't until university and more companies were trying to reach out to people like myself that I began to put the pieces together. I think a lot of the time we're focusing on a lot of our older people, mainly because they're the next people to go into the workforce. But I think our secondary school students, especially in the areas that I was living in, where they're not don't have the most support and our schools are kind of crumbling to the ground, you know, they need it the most. I think a lot of us are getting lost under this curb of academics or curb of, you know, just there isn't enough resources. And once you put out that helping hand, the people who know it's going to help them get to that next level, they're going to take it. I was one of those people. I'd really kind of let things pass me until someone said, hey, I see you going to university. And I said, no way. I'm not doing it, mate. It's too expensive. But it takes a bit more information. And once I had that information, I said, right, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to work. I think companies just need to go back to secondary school students, especially, talk to them, figure out what do they want, let them know what's out there. And once they have that information, the world is their oyster.
Fantastic suggestion. I thought that was great. Brilliant. And Jonathan?
Honestly, Samara and Ashley, you're taking all my ideas away. But I'd say for me, what companies need to do, and I think we're seeing a lot more of it now, is hosting more events like these in a professional setting and also in a personal setting, so going into schools, but also hosting more events for like Black History Month. One thing that Enterprise done really well when I first started, within my second month, I got invited to a race and religion event, and to me it was great just to kind of see how I can not only diversify myself, but see the variety of other people that were there, again, bringing to that sense of belonging. I think what's great is, you know, in the past when these events used to be put on by companies, it used to feel like it was just time to hit a status quo, just to kind of, we've hit base, now we can move on from it. But now I think what's great is a lot of companies are seeing the value of what these brings. For example, this panel event, and then if we go furthermore, like the race and religion events and so on, it just encourages a lot more people to not only speak up, but to also be able to have an impact on other colleagues, other people, students, and whatnot.
I thought that was a great answer there, Jonathan, and I can completely relate. I remember in my first 8 weeks starting at Enterprise, they also ran a race and religion sort of event. And I remember just being set up with some of the senior leaders and just talking to them. And I think that was the point when I realized, hey, this is not just a job for me. This is going to be my career. This is going to be my long-term career. And there's a lot of importance in doing these type of things there. So yeah, brilliant answers.
And just
Ash, go on.
Sorry, Debbie. Okay. Yeah, just getting more young people, young Black people to speak in the workplace. I think that's like the fact that they've asked us to be here is phenomenal. And I'm like, I've got no experience, but I think when I look back, like when Samara's spoken, I'm looking at it and taking, wow, there's a lot of things that she's saying a lot of amazing things at such a young age that I'm like, wow, she's an inspiration, and people could kind of relate to that. And I remember being asked, like within my first month, to share a little bit about Black History Month, and I was like, me, like, I'm no expert, but they were like, share anything. And I remember sharing about my mum. Again, the responses that I got from senior management, from interns, from branch managers was phenomenal. And so the more we're able to have a platform to voice our opinions and feelings and whatnot, the more people can learn and improve.
Agreed. A platform like this, exactly. Agreed. Ashley, a question for you. How has enterprise mobility supported you in your career progression as somebody who's been here for 8 years?
Oh, okay. That's a fun question. So how has enterprise supported me? I think growing up as like, I think anyone of like a diverse background will know that like when you're growing up, especially from our parents, a lot of the time, we're told that we have to be like 2 times better than our counterparts just so that like, just to get our foot through the door. I think being at enterprise and especially some of the leadership that I personally have had, it's just helped to humanize me as a person and help me to understand that I don't have to be perfect at every turn. And sometimes we genuinely feel like we have to be perfect. We have to be achieving so much more than absolutely everybody else at every single turn. But what I have learned and what enterprise has helped me to understand also is that sometimes you just have to spin a plate, let the plate spin, and then move on to the next one. You don't have to try to get everything right all at the same time. It's okay to sometimes get something wrong. It's okay to make a mistake. We are only human. And from doing that, I think I have seen so much more progression in myself just because I've taken the time to get things right. I've taken the time to make mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes, and I've just been so much better off for it.
I thought that was a great analogy, Ash. I'm going to have to borrow that one sometime. Great. Thank you. And probably final question for all of you. What advice do you have for young Black professionals who are just starting in their careers? Ashley, whilst we're with you, let's get the answer from you first.
What advice do I have? I'm going to stay exactly on that point, to be fair. And I'm going to say, don't be scared to fall flat on your face. Be brave, put yourself out there and make mistakes. I'd say, listen, if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Probably, I mean, unless you're like a heart surgeon, probably don't be making mistakes. But as long as you're not, you have the wiggle room to make a couple mistakes. And ultimately, you're only going to be better for it. The second best way to learn is from your mistakes. So let's go with that.
Love that. Samara.
I think again, same note, fantastic what Ashley was saying, just be kind to yourself. I have this habit of comparing what everybody else is doing to what I'm doing. I always feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. Am I going to make it? Samara, you go at your own pace. And a lot of the time, we're trying to all get that next big role, make that money. We all want to be successful, and that's great. However, we're all different people. We all want to work on different things. I know during my placement, I wanted to work on my presentation skills, absolutely terrified about it, hated public speaking, and now I'm speaking in front of you guys. Everybody else could do that before me. It took me a year, and that's fine. And a lot of the time, again, you got to try new things. As Ashley said, you've got to fall flat on your face. You got to make a lot of mistakes, because if you are someone who decides you want to actively learn from those mistakes, you're going to go very, very far. Simple as that. But also, don't be so hard on yourself when you make that mistake and you might not learn from it the first time. It might take one or two other kickings to get it going, but yeah, kindness is the best thing you can be. It's like the best merit you can have for yourself.
I would never have believed you hated public speaking, because you're doing very, very well, girl. Well done.
I hate
it. Jonathan.
I've got 2 points. I think the first one is what we talked about in the beginning of our Black History Month is recognizing that you're more capable of achieving so much more. If our parents, if our ancestors were able to show great resilience, then why can't we? So you're more capable of achieving so much than you realize. And once you put your foot down and obviously make mistakes, like Ashley said, and be kind to yourself, you know, the amount of doors that will be open to you will be numerous. And then the second thing is it ties in with well-being, is reaching out. Don't be afraid to reach out at all. There's a support network there for you that wants you to win, that wants you to improve, that wants you to get better. And so if you can access that, it's so accessible. And sometimes we're our own biggest enemy because we get used to, you know, I'm competing against myself. It's just me and no help. But honestly, there's a variety of resources there. And all you've got to do is just ask. And that's how I've been able to, I wouldn't say excel in my career because my career is very, very short. But what I've noticed is when I've been able to reach out to people and ask for their advice and for their help, whether it be a mentor, whether it be a colleague, having those two ideas combined into one has always propelled me forward. So I'd say reach out and recognize that you're more capable of achieving so much than you realize.
Absolutely, so true. So true. And even though I'm not one of the panelists, I would also like to add some advice for young Black professionals to not limit yourself into any boxes. You can excel whether you're in central London, South London, whether you're in Liverpool, whether you're in Birmingham, whether you are in Kent like myself, you know. Don't feel limited to have to fit certain stereotypes. You can excel, you can do whatever it is you put your mind to. The tools and the resources are out there. And if they're not, you can go out there and you can grab them and make, you know, a professional career for yourself. So yeah. Wow. So thank you all for the insight and into all of your career journeys and sharing all of these nuggets of information and advice here and there. That concludes all of our questions for today. I hope you all managed to take some notes, as I sure did. Black History Month is such an important month for many Black people, and our speakers have really highlighted on how representation and mentorships can have a lasting impact on your career advancement. I hope that from today's session, you have several takeaways to be able to have the initiatives to move through your professional careers. Thank you all for attending today's webinar hosted by Enterprise Mobility in partnership with Student Minds. And thank you, Geraldine, as well, for your contribution. I have been your host, Temi Soyinka, and I hope you all have a great afternoon. Take care.
Bye, everyone, and good luck with your careers. No doubt you will shine.